opportunity is starting to be more evenly distributed in this Web3 world. It's not about, growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut and going to private school and going to Harvard and, going to the country club where you meet everyone quite as much as it used to be. A kid on the streets in India who grows up with the internet and has access to Discord and can participate in these conversations may in the future have the same set of opportunities as everybody else.
Well, let me introduce you first, actually, before we get into too much of the conversation, so people know who they're talking to or listening to. So you're listening to Quest. I'm Justin Kahn, your host, and my guest today is Sahil Bloom, who I'm very, very excited to talk about too. He's an investor, creator, storyteller, partner at the Room Where It Happens, and the co-host of Where It Happens podcast, angel investor in over 35 technology startups, and has spent his whole career investing in very large funds, and also publisher of a newsletter, right? You have a 50,000 subscriber newsletter that you just started this year, I believe, focused on business, mental models, economics, called The Curiosity Chronicle. Did I get it all right?
I think you got it all right. Yeah. It makes me sound really scattered now when you read it out like that, I think. It's something I struggle with personally, is like trying to figure out like, what am I? How do I give the like one line on what it is that I do?
Well, I think what's really cool is that, I see a lot of myself in when I'm reading what you do. It's like, I love to do many different things. And for the longest time, I was like, I need to just be, focused on one thing and, do that. And I think now I've kind of embraced my superpower is like, I'm great at ideas. I love to inspire people. I love to create content, and I'm just going to do as many things that I want that, fit in that zone of genius,
Yeah. It's like the great, it's this massive change that I think some people are talking about, but we've barely scratched the surface on, in like the way we work, but also the way we identify ourselves around work. And I think COVID accelerated it. It was a trend that was already happening, but there was just this, for the last several hundred years, probably since the industrial age, this whole idea that you took a job and you worked in that job for 50 years and they gave you a gold watch and you retired. And like, that was what life was. And you went to a cocktail party and people asked you what you did. And you had your little 2-second clip on I'm an X at X. And that was that. And I think we've now just completely shattered it, or in the process of shattering it, where I can't do that. And it's actually one of my biggest struggles is I go to something and people say, what do you do? Or, what do you do for a job? What do you do for a living? Whatever it is. And I don't have the little quick line that I can give. And so it almost feels awkward and kludgy and a little embarrassing. But I think we're slowly shifting to a world where you can, monetize, make a great living from, and have tons of energy around working on 20 different things. Like this portfolio theory of work is really starting to form. It's super interesting.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true in Silicon Valley, where my career is. People are creating content, they're investing, they're also starting a company or running a company. A lot of people are doing both, now. And so I think it's just becoming more accepted. Yeah. But I want to talk about
go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, I want to talk about some of the things that you're doing, because I'm like endlessly fascinated by your Twitter. Like, your Twitter game is insane. It's probably the best that I've seen in the last year. And that's how I started following you. And what I love is, you're very articulate and write really concise, like powerful thoughts and ideas. It's something I aspire to on Twitter, but I think you're actually better at it than I am. And you did this viral tweet thread about the most powerful paradoxes of life. I want to talk about that. But actually the thing that I really, really want to talk about first is buying the X Games in the form of a DAO, which I thought was like just a brilliant idea. Yeah. So can you give people like a update on like how you thought of that idea? What's the idea and like where it's at?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first off, I appreciate the compliment on the Twitter game. It's been a long work in progress, and learned by pounding my head into a wall over the last year and a half at all of that. So I appreciate the compliment. It means a lot coming from you. So the X Games, this is like, I'm super excited about it. It's crazy because it's only been, I don't know, a week or so since I originally put out the idea. It feels like it's been a lifetime. So In my prior life, I was at an investment fund, which I'm still involved with in some capacity, a private equity fund, spent a bunch of time co-leading all of our consumer investing activity. As part of that, I was involved with a bunch of action sports brands that we'd invested in. One of them is Fox Racing. It's the largest motocross mountain bike player that's out there. I'm on the board of that business, had been around it. And basically, I had this realization that the sport had this amazing cult loyal community of fans, followers, activists around it. And what the sport was missing was like the broad-based personality driving cultural moments around it. It had this crazy fervent fan base, but had yet to like cross the chasm into mainstream by providing personalities alongside it. And we saw that in a very visceral way, the impact of it with Drive to Survive, with the Formula One racing, and how it had this massive impact on the sport. US viewership, has like 10x'd over the last few years, or some massive increase. And a lot of that was driven by, in my mind, putting a face to these drivers. It was no longer just a car racing around a track. It was Lewis Hamilton or it was Max Verstappen, and you knew their stories and you knew their personalities.
Yeah.
And so what I had been musing on was like, why hasn't that happened with action sports? When I was growing up, the X Games, Tony Hawk, Bob Burnquist, like all of these guys, I have all this nostalgia around it. I wasn't even a skater. I wasn't even, someone that participated in the sports, but their faces and the personalities made those moments really special to me. And so I had this idea about the X Games of like, why don't you reimagine it? ESPN and Disney have been letting it languish for a long time. Honestly, like not through any material fault of their own. It's just not core to their business anymore. It's small. They've clearly tried to prioritize streaming. They've moved away from the cable stuff. The production is a pain, I'm sure. And so why can't you just reimagine it? And reimagine it by creating a cultural moment that creates those personalities, brings those stories to life in a very real and visceral way. And then B, leverage this amazing thing that's happening with Web3 and the ability for athletes, fans, the communities to actually participate and be a part of the entire reimagination, the process, and the story, and really participate in a much more meaningful way. Those two things come together and create this unique opportunity. And so I basically, like, this build in public thing coincided with all this. And I said, why don't I do an episode on it? I'll put a tweet thread out about it and see if it resonates with other people. I thought it was a cool idea, but who knows? You'll let the market decide, right? And so a couple weeks ago, I put out the episode. We had Apollo Ono on as a guest, who I'm a massive, massive fan of. He's an incredible guy.
Yeah.
If you haven't had him on here yet, you should.
I should. I mean, he's a friend of mine. He's incredible.
He's amazing. And his take the X Games completely aside, his lessons on life and transitions and hard pivots, he's incredible. And he's got a book coming out soon, so you should definitely have him on to talk about it. It's incredible. But had him on, pitched him the idea, put out the episode, put out this tweet thread on it, and all hell just completely broke loose. The interest and the excitement around it was completely bananas. All of the big investment groups reaching out, all of these athletes reaching out. It was just like very clear that a lot of other people had that same feeling of nostalgia associated with this, and that people realized and understood that we were at a unique point in time and that there was a really unique thesis to go and execute against it.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not that new. Your formulation of changing it from a single event to like a series of events, that's a great idea and kind of obvious in retrospect, but it's a great idea. But the idea of like fan ownership of something isn't new, right? Like the Packers have done that, had been like that for a long time. But there's something about this kind of like the Web3 aspect, or like making it a DAO, or like allowing open participation that's very clear. It's like all you have to do is like send crypto to this address and then you're like into it, join a Discord. It's much more of like building it public that's captured the zeitgeist in some way, right?
Yeah, it's a real narrative shift, right? The entirety of like crypto and like the Web3 narrative change is a massive movement forward for that entire space, because you get away from like all of the kind of older people who think of crypto as a scam, and you can talk about it as Web3 and the things that are being built and the Lego blocks concepts around it, and interoperability and open source and like all of these great things that we can now talk about because we've moved past the narrative challenges of what crypto stood for. And I think that like Web3 in that way is just onboarding a lot of new people to these ideas, the ideas of community ownership, the idea that fans can really participate in the action in a more meaningful way, turn things that were previously rent, like paying for a ticket to something. I think of that as rent. It's out the door, it's gone, into an investable asset class. Now I can like buy an NFT for access to special events. And now that asset, as the X Games continues to grow, is really an investable asset. I can eventually sell that and make money on it. That's a very cool shift that's happening from rent to ownership. So there's a lot that I think is capturing public attention, and just the idea of like anybody being able to participate in these things, regardless of your wealth. Accreditation laws are completely asinine to me at this point. And so I think that captures a lot of public sentiment and public excitement when you're able to just open things up to the masses.
Is there, like, this might be a little premature, but like, is it legal to, for X Games, would you do like a rev share, and then is it a security if you do a rev share? I think there's probably a legal question around the DAO, right?
Yeah, this is the big thing I've been wrestling with over the last week or so since this went out. The legal ramifications of a DAO buying an OpCo, an operating company, are sketchy at best, and like illegal at worst, probably, just because there's no precedent for it, right? Like you had Constitution DAO was the big one that everyone knew about. That was all over the news. They were buying a piece of paper. There was no cash flows off of the thing. There was no bankruptcy filings. If the Constitution can't go bankrupt, and so maybe it can. Maybe it's morally bankrupt at times. but that's a separate discussion. We can talk about that later. But so the actual legal side and the loopholes and the hoops you'd have to jump through, there's a lot of wood to chop on that front. And also just the general construct. Would ESPN or Disney sell to a DAO? My guess is no, if it was just a DAO buying the entirety, because they care about the legacy. They don't want to deal with the legal headaches. They care about credibility or something to go wrong. And so my position is generally that a hybrid approach is probably the right one, both to get it done and also to actually go and execute against it, because there's a huge aspect of this that's like, you need an operating team. It's a real business that needs to run. There's payroll, there's employees, there's liabilities. And so to be able to figure all of that out, I think you'd have to take some sort of hybrid approach, where I would sort of think of it as like the progressive decentralization of this overall idea.
So people would just like contribute to a DAO, and there would be some sort of company, operating company that buys X Games, and then the DAO would have some equity ownership in that.
Yeah, my straw man would be like an investment group or partner. There's a big public company that's really excited about potentially partnering on this. Comes in as kind of a majority, perhaps. A DAO is formed, collects capital into it in the form of ETH. That entity then contributes into the acquisition of the X Games as a single line that sits there. It's a DAO in the background, but in the actual line, it's like an LLC or an operating company that sits on the cap table so that you're not running into the legal things. And then in the background, you do whatever you want in the DAO entity in terms of tokenomics, incentivizing athletes, incentivizing fans, etc. And that the DAO entity would have kind of governance rights around the Web3ification strategy of the actual X Games.
And what do you think the, ways that, like, how is this different than the Packers, right? Or like, what are the ways that you can bring Web3 and like this community and participation to support this newly imagined X Games?
Yeah. Well, put your close your eyes and just imagine, any one of a million things. I like every time I have a conversation about it, I feel like I come up with new ways. I think NFTs for access to special things are a very obvious way, whether it's to events, whether it's to things with the athletes being able to actually capitalize on, their unique skill set, especially during that period when they're highly marketable, to stoke fandom, stoke that fervent base. NFTs that allow you, special privileges to control the action, like user-generated content almost, where you're able to buy an NFT that allows you to kind of pit your favorite athlete against, some competitor in special events or special series that are happening, I think are a really cool opportunity. There's a ton around gambling and betting that could happen here. Again, with NFTs at the center of it, DraftKings has done a great job on that recently with the marketplace they're opening up. So I think there's a lot of opportunities around that. And then the token, side with the DAO, just being able to actually incentivize and compensate future athletes that are not in the games currently to be able to like hold back effectively what is like a stock option pool, right? For this entity for future athletes that are going to come in and create value and continue to support and build the space. And similarly for fans, the people that are at the grassroots level, building up these communities, building up these events to be able to participate in the value appreciation of the overall kind of movement is very, very interesting. So I think there's probably 1,000 ways that you think about. And honestly, there are people that are 1,000 times smarter than me on this stuff. And so my goal with it was like, put out the idea and then bring those smartest people to the table. I'm not one of them. I just want to bring those people in and set them loose on something exciting. And if it's me coordinating and quarterbacking things, great. If there are people that are better suited to do that, I'm also totally open to that. It's why I wanted to commit to doing it in public and the open source nature, because I think that's really the ethos of this entire thing.
Yeah, I think one of the things that really red-pilled me into crypto this year as a builder was this idea that, you could create this massive incentivization of the community with appreciation, potential appreciation and upside of like whatever you're building. And it was kind of like a way to distribute equity but to tens or hundreds of thousands of people instead of just, the people that work at your company. And so
yeah, it's a very Silicon Valley mindset. Sorry to interrupt you. It's a very Silicon Valley mindset because if you think about like in the journey of organizations and corporations, I think about like Josh Wolf, the investor, talks about directional arrows of progress as an investment framework. I think about that a lot. When I think about it in the context of DAOs or Web3, what I look at is like industrial era, you incentivized with wages, and that was all the power to the corporation, and you incentivized with wages. Silicon Valley came along and figured out, oh, we can actually get a lot more out of people and really incentivize them by giving them some ownership. They're all rowing in the same direction. And it was the 10% stock option pool or equity pool. And that incentivized people, hopefully, and helped with retention, and people were rowing in the same direction. This to me feels like where we are headed. The like natural next step is community equity. There's the team. There's also this community that's stoking and building these things from the ground up. They should participate in it. They're creating immense value here. And so to take that a step further, all of the infrastructure that now needs to get built to kind of run the rails of managing community equity, the thousands of people that'll be on your cap table, the thousands of people involved, incentivizing them. I think that is kind of the natural extension of where things are headed, and it's super exciting to think about.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's like the way things should be on the internet,
You hope so, right? Like Jiho, do you know Jiho, he's one of the co-founders of Axie Infinity. Yeah.
I don't know, but I know who he is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You should have him on as well. He's fantastic. We just had him on our show. He's amazing. Young guy, but he's such an amazing story because he was just in the community Discord of Axie. He wasn't actually he wasn't there day one. He was in the community day one and was just building and like basically mopping the floors in this Discord. And then because of all the work he was putting in and how high value it was, became a co-founder, and he's the chief growth officer of Axie. And something about that is just so cool to me because what it means is like opportunity is starting to be more evenly distributed in this Web3 world. It's not about, growing up in Greenwich, Connecticut and going to private school and going to Harvard and, going to the country club where you meet everyone quite as much as it used to be. A kid on the streets in India who grows up with the internet and has access to Discord and can participate in these conversations may in the future have the same set of opportunities as everybody else. And I think, you're a capitalist. You're like a lot of us. We're all for unequal outcomes, but we want equal opportunity. Everyone should have an opportunity to create those unequal outcomes. And I think that the promise of Web3 is so big in that realm.
100%. I love it. And with our own, I just launched this project called Fractal. It's kind of like an NFT gaming marketplace that we're launching on Christmas Eve. So this week.
Cool.
And, you can just see it in the community. Like we have over 100,000 people join our Discord in the first week, and people are just they're like really into it. And, they want to show up, they want to participate in potential financial upside of this marketplace, but they also like, it's pretty cool because you can see it's very democratized in terms of like people who are becoming involved in the project or participating. They're just like bubbling up and they're like volunteering, right? Like in the Discord and helping out. And then those, you can kind of see as this future where those people get rewarded for their participation, and they could be there anywhere and everywhere in the world. They're not in Silicon Valley or San Francisco or whatever
It's amazing, right?
necessarily.
We
Yeah.
have a Discord that we set up for our podcast. A big part of what we were trying to build was a community first podcast platform, and so Discord and the community we're building is really at the heart of it. And there's nothing close to 100,000 people in there yet, but there's 3,000 or so people in there after a few weeks, and it's this really cool interaction you're starting to see of people creating value for the community. Every time an episode drops, they're kind of bouncing around ideas. Like we have the X Games channel in there where people are sharing their ideas about how to do it. And someone, like in the other day, 2 days ago, someone reached out to me asking if I could connect them with my friend, David Perel, who's this, amazing writer, prolific creator. He had built him like a new landing page for his course that he runs, and said he was having trouble getting in touch with him. So I sent it to David, and David was like, damn, this is dope. Connect me with him. And now this guy's working with David to like help revamp his landing page. And this is a kid in India, that just took the initiative, built this thing out in Figma, sent it to me, got connected by me through. But that's so cool. When in history have we ever been able to do things like that? And the access is so real and so unique. I just love it. I mean, it gets me. I'm getting excited about it, even just saying it here.
I love it. I think that DAOs, I think this kind of community equity, like you said, through a DAO is the future. And there's like so many different forms of human organization that will be rewritten in this way. Just like there's so many things that became companies, in this kind of like Web 2.0 version, and like now this is the next evolution of human organization in a lot of ways.
100%.
So yeah, I want to talk about your other amazing viral tweet threads. Like, tell me about the paradoxes of life tweet thread.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like I don't have a lot of people think I have some like grand kind of strategy around this where I've like planned it out months in advance and have like a content map. Like I'm some company, right, that like churns out content. I have a team working behind me that are like back in the corner, a bunch of Oompa Loompas or something that are like churning this out for me. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, this is literally me on a Saturday morning. I love writing. I love just the thought process that goes into it. I love more than anything else how it clarifies my thinking, and how it forces reflection. And so the paradoxes one is funny because it basically came together over the course of like 6 months of I've always just been fascinated by, and paradoxes might even be like the wrong word for it because I don't know if it perfectly fits the definition of paradoxes, but these like opposites that happen in life, where when you're growing up, you're told that like, you have to push in order to make progress on things, or you have to keep growing and like it's linear and that's how things work, or you need to move really fast to, continue accelerating. And what you learn as you get older, and this, I'm sure through your own struggles, as I've learned them through my own struggles, real life often couldn't be further from that view, right? The way life works and the way progress happens, the way you find things that you were, looking for. It's never this like, Disney movie version of it where it's just clean and, you knew exactly what it was. And so the paradoxes one was just my own reflection, literally over the course of 6 months of me jotting down into my Notion board. Every single time one of those came to me, I would just write it down, just like one line, move slow to move fast, or, shrink to grow, whatever those things were. And then I would kind of, as more thoughts came into my mind, just sketch them out. And I put it out there. Clearly it resonated with people because it, I mean, it really, really blew up.
It's like 20,000 retweets now.
Yeah, it was my biggest thing ever. I always look at like the impression counts because I get blown away by that. And I think it did, well over 10 million impressions, which is still remarkable to me when I think of the reach. I just looked actually yesterday and like my Twitter did over 500 million impressions in 2021, which is like, I don't even know what to make of that number. It's totally crazy to me. But the paradox is one, I mean, I think it resonated with people because everyone has felt those like narrative violations about the way things are supposed to work, but haven't put them into words. in kind of a clear way. And so what I try to do with all of my writing is like put things into words that you've felt but haven't done that yet. You haven't taken that step or haven't found that ability to put it into words so that you can share it with people or that you can think about it and find value in it. And that's boiling it down. I think what a lot of my writing does is, I've taken the time to kind of, abstract away the complexity and give you something simple. The same way like a company might do that, like a Twilio abstracts all the complexity that exists behind messaging and then gives you something really simple. I'm trying to do that with business, finance, growth, life, all of these areas.
All right, guys, quick commercial break. Today, my video is brought to you by Magic Mind. Magic Mind is a energy shot that you take in the morning alongside or in replacement of your morning coffee, and it gives you consistent, clean energy throughout the day. If you're an entrepreneur or creative in need of that mental boost, then Magic Mind's for you. It's something I take every day. In fact, I love it so much that I invested in the company. My friend James started this company a couple of years ago to solve his own problem, and he's really built a product that I think is amazing. If you want to try Magic Mind out, you can get 20% off with my discount code Justin20 at magicmind.co. I really like Magic Mind because it gives me great energy throughout the day. It's filled with adaptogens and nootropics that help you focus and make you relax, and it tastes great. Once again, if you want to try it out, go to magicmind.co and enter the code Justin20. I'll link it in the description below. Thanks.
I love that speed one actually really resonated with me. You have to slow down to speed up, because I had that experience with Atrium, like my last company, where I raised a ton of money and I was like, oh, we need to go super fast, and we just kind of like we weren't very deliberate about the product and like who our market was. And I think in the end, like, and it was funny because I was contrasting it with like one of my friends started this company that I invested in called Mercury, which is this digital
I'm
bank,
an investor in Mercury as well.
Great.
Cheers.
So, congratulations. Congratulations to the both of us.
Congratulations. Exactly.
But Ahmad took like years to like even release his product, right? He took, multiple years, or he's just working on the product. And I was like, this is going so slowly, but then obviously they built an amazing product, and that's what enabled them to have this very fast growth post-launch, right?
Yeah.
And so just seeing that contrast. Yeah.
Yeah, because with each one of these, I mean, you mentioned it, like you have your own personal story with it with Atrium. With each one of these, like there's a personal story for me that led to this realization, and it's always some failure, right? Like it's never, again, to the point of vulnerability. We were chatting about that before we started. It's always that I fucked something up, right? Like, excuse my language, but like I, messed something up or made some mistake or felt the pain from not doing this the right way. And that's what's leading to these reflections that then I'm trying to clarify. And I think we all experience those, but you expect that these people that you glamorize don't have those moments. Like I expect I'm going to talk to Justin, and I've like looked up to him for a long time. He's amazing. Everything's great. He's, made money. He's started these successful startups. Everything's great. He's the happiest person on earth. That's like what you expect on the internet. And so when you find that these people are the same, they have same exact struggles as you, maybe in a different realm, but still deal with those things. There's something really liberating about that and empowering. And so what I'm trying to do is just share those realizations. What I struggle with and what I'm trying to figure out a better way to do is share like the personal side of those things alongside it, right? Because I share the thread, like the paradoxes of life, and I share it, and it, a lot of people share it out and it resonates with a lot of people, but there's a very personal side to all of those then that I think a lot of people would probably value hearing of, like, how did I screw that up? The speed one, where did I make mistakes that held me back or that screwed me up? I burned out, right? Like I used to think sleep when I'm dead, I'm going to wake up at 4 every morning. I'm going to outwork you. I'm going to just move much faster. I burned out. Hurt my health, like started to feel my health deteriorate at a young age, hurt my relationships because I was constantly tired and stressed. But I don't share that in those Twitter threads because it's hard. It's not the best format for it. So I'm still personally working out the right way to do that, to get more vulnerable and share those things. That's on tap for 2022.
You should do a podcast, about it. I feel like that's a great great format or video.
Yeah, it's something I've thought about is doing like a video with each one where I kind of share, the personal story behind each tweet or behind each one of these type of things. Cause I do think, maybe the newsletter, in the audio format or something is a way to do it, but I'm still musing on it. Definitely open to any ideas. So whenever we next catch up, please hit me.
Yeah. That's what really resonates with my audience is I just talk about the stuff that I fucked up or things that didn't work. The things, the good and the bad, as like honestly as possible. And for me, video is an easy way to do it because I don't actually used to love to write a lot, but now I find mine pretty lazy. So I just want to like turn on a camera, riff about it, edit it, and then that's it.
Yeah. And it's not everyone that has and I don't know if I have this. You clearly have an ability to, be thoughtful still with your stream of consciousness. It's probably because you're just much more intelligent. But the ability to do that is a skill in and of itself, to like be able to turn on the camera and just kind of be thoughtful, even though you're in a stream of consciousness openness. I've always admired Gary Tan actually for that. I think his videos and what he's doing on YouTube is amazing. And Gary's an amazing human being and just a lovely guy. But that ability is a different thing. I think it's a skill like anything else that needs to be honed.
You're probably right. It's like the entrepreneur skill because you have to, you're in meetings trying to create frameworks for people and explain things in articulate, ways and like kind of organize people. And then that's like about organizing your own thoughts first, I think, in a real-time way based on like whatever data or is happening in the meeting. And then, so that's probably why it works.
And maybe
I got my 10,000 hours.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it just gets better with time. I imagine for you, if you go back and look at your earliest videos, you'd be like, holy shit. Oh man. Like, this was rough, or I was like jumping from thing to thing, or it wasn't very smooth. I'm that way when I go and look at my early things that I wrote. I almost like, it makes me feel a little cringy. Like I want to delete it almost because I can't figure out how I thought that was good enough to put out. So it's funny in hindsight, but it's like anything else. You just get so much crisper with your thoughts and with your ideas as you continue to build around them.
That's like the, that's how you're doing a good job when your early content sucks but you put it out there because you're like iterating and improving. If you're not ashamed and embarrassed of what something you did a couple of years ago that you're not growing.
I've always been a big believer in the man in the arena or the woman in the arena for that matter. Just put yourself out there. It's scary as shit, but just like put yourself out there. I don't think there's any glory in just like throwing rocks from the sidelines. I'm a big believer of like, if you want to get into anything new or you want to learn, you want to grow, you just have to put yourself out there. And I don't think that means like be extroverted and go out on camera and do a bunch of things. I just think it means like put some skin in the game, get out there, like put your neck on the line a little bit with something. I just find that every single moment of growth that's come in my life, and a lot of the failures, but a lot of the growth as a result of that comes from just being willing to put myself in the arena.
Well, let me ask you, how do you become comfortable with that? Because a lot of the listeners are, they're young, about to get started in their career or getting started. A lot of them are intimidated about like taking that first step. Like how did you become comfortable doing it?
For me, a lot of it came from baseball. Because you are so publicly failing on a regular basis in baseball.
Yeah.
Maybe not as much in high school. In high school for me, and growing up, I was always just much better than most people. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. I grew up in a small town and I was, naturally pretty talented. And then I worked super hard in high school, got a scholarship to go play at Stanford. And I thought I was hot shit, right? Like I was like, man, I'm going to Stanford, look at me, I'm the man. And I was kind of an asshole because of it. And like look back and really regret the type of person I was at the time. But I got to Stanford and, I got just kicked in the mouth, man. Like day one, I went to class and I was like the dumbest kid in class. I went to the baseball field and I was the worst guy on the team. And I just remember realizing that I wasn't that legit anymore. And I was like, man, if I want to accomplish anything here, I'm going to really have to put in the work. And basically over the course of that 4 or 5 years I was at Stanford, I just failed over and over and over again. And it's public. Like it's whether it's in front of your team or in front of your friends or your family flies out for a game and you give up a home run. Like I gave up, it's in my Twitter bio. People laugh about it. I gave up a grand slam on ESPN in 2012 to like lose our season.
Oh my
And it's
God.
the most public failure you can imagine. It's on national television. So all of your friends at home are watching because they think you're the man and you're watching this. And it's just disastrous, right? It's the worst possible thing that can happen. Not to
Yeah.
mention the 10,000 fans. It was at the other team's stadium. So they're like cheering. It's the best moment of their lives while it's the worst of yours. But that public failure, like when you fail on that stage, it's sort of like what else can really hurt me, right? and,
Yeah.
and so like putting myself out there, if someone doesn't like my writing or they say I suck, okay, like hey, it can't be much worse. And so for me, it's almost just building up a tolerance to those failures. And I think the advice I give to young people is sort of just try to separate yourself from it. View failures as like micro cuts that kind of make you stronger in the long run. And you want to minimize how hard how hard you get punched, right? Like if you're going out there and you're just putting your face out there and getting cocked in the face by Mike Tyson, that's probably not the best. But if you can take kind of glancing blows here and there and shiver a little bit and get punched and get knocked down, but it's not a total knockout, that's what you want, because those are the things you're learning from. It's building a stronger jaw, to continue with the metaphor. And so my whole thing has always been like, how can I put myself out there, make sure that I'm not taking the full knockout blow, but finding ways to kind of learn from those little ones along the way.
I love that. I love that. For me, I think it was always, because I used to be very afraid of failure and I'm very afraid to put myself out there actually. But the trick I always used was I would just agree to do things in the future, because when I didn't have to, like, it was kind of like, oh, I'm not agreeing to do it now. And I'd agree to do something in the future. And then I was like, when that time came, I was like, what was I thinking? Like, oh, I'm going to go on stage and do this talk. I'm like so terrified to speak in public. So,
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, well, I have to do it because I promised to do it. So then I'd like go do it, be nervous, probably suck actually in the early years. But then I inoculated myself to like,
Yeah. I like that.
do it.
I like that mental model of just like commit to things. I've always like to take that a step further. I've always thought if you publicly commit to things, it's even stronger. So like, there have been things I've thought about doing, and then if I tweet it out, or if I say it in a newsletter, like now a lot of people know that I said I was going to do it. And are you a man of your word or not? And I mean, one of the things my parents always instilled in me was just like, you have to, be a person of their word. And when you say something, that needs to be as good as any contract. Like a handshake has to be as good with you as anything else in the world. And so that resonates with me a lot. I've never really thought about it much, but I think it's a really good way to do it.
Yeah, I do that all the time. So like I quit drinking alcohol 3 years ago. And one of the first things I did was I put it on Twitter. I was like, I've always struggled with drinking, I'm going to quit, and I'm just putting it out there. So like, to hold me accountable, and then I haven't had a drink in 3 years. And it was pretty incredible
amazing.
Actually.
And I imagine your life is much better for it.
Yeah, it's way better. And, but it was that like, I know if I put this out there, then I am somebody who like never wants to be a hypocrite. Like, similar to you, like when I say I'm going to do something, that's what I want to do. My word, my bond. And so like, I knew that was like a irrevocable decision that was, would keep me at least seriously on the line, like consider it, like very, very afraid to cross that line. And it worked. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also amazing, for all the flack that these social media platforms get, or that the internet gets for like toxicity and the bad people out there. It's amazing the communities that that we have built, for support. I imagine people were extremely supportive of you and wanted to be along for that journey and hold you accountable and do it with you. I'm sure you inspired thousands of people, hundreds of people to do the same and to take that same leap. And so I've been blown away. I mean, I've only been on this like public journey for 18 months or so now. I started it in May of 2020. And I've just been blown away by the positivity of the internet. The negative things tend to stick out in your mind. There's like a cognitive bias about that where that's what jumps out to you. But the overall support, positivity, the communities that we're building around this, the people that are inspired by it, that to me, that's why I get up in the morning. Like, I think that is so, so amazing. The reach of it, and that you're able to reach all of these people around the world. It's really remarkable.
I agree. The feedback I've gotten on my content has been overwhelmingly positive, and people are just very, you know, it's incredible. Like people are like writing in like, hey, other people were like, I quit drinking because I saw you quit drinking. You know, when I announced I was going to quit drinking, I created a group. People asked for like a support group, so I created a Telegram group, and with like 2,000 people joined it. You know, and so it was really cool to see that. Like you said, that's like kind of an outpouring of positive energy, and then like you said, it's like people see the negative, and that's the cognitive bias because that's human nature. But like if you look for it, the positivity is there.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think about it every time I put something out, right? There's some percentage of negative, no matter what. I put out this like, I do a year-end reflection every year, and I put out 21 lessons that I learned in 2021. And again, all of them, I haven't gotten to talk about it, but all of them come from my own failures and then things I learned as a result of those failures. And I put it out and got a great response, and tons of people seem to find value in it, which is phenomenal. But the like couple of people that, you know, are sitting there kind of wanting to tear me down on it, that's what I'm thinking about. I'm like, man, maybe I shouldn't have put that out, reacting to it that way. And that's kind of how I started to feel. And so it's always like a helpful reminder to just think about how many people find value in the things you're putting out. And I was talking to a new friend of mine, and he said how he shared it with a handful of his colleagues, and they had all found value in it. And all of a sudden, it kind of brought me back to reality of like, wow, these people that I don't know were finding value in this thing. Maybe the negative isn't, you know, maybe that's like the tax on reaching all of these positive people, right? It's like you have this small tax that you need to bear in order to have an impact on a lot of people.
Yeah. 100%. So one more thing I saw on your Twitter is that you're about to become a father.
I am.
Is that your first kid?
My first kid, man. I'm so excited.
Congratulations. That's incredible.
Yeah. Thank you. Scary feeling, but man, I'm so excited.
That's awesome. When is your baby due?
Little boy, due in May 22nd, I want to say is the due date.
Oh, amazing.
And it'd been, you know, it was it's interesting. I'm sorry I cut you off. It's an interesting thing because everyone celebrates these things. And one thing that we never talk about is like how much of a struggle it is for anybody. Like you just expect that when you hit a certain age, everyone just expects, okay, now it's time to have a child, and things go smoothly, and the health of the baby's okay, and the health of the mother's okay, and it moves on. And, you know, my wife and I had like, candidly, maybe she'll kill me for saying this, but like we had struggled a bit, you know, with getting pregnant, and women especially, I find, you know, they tie so much biologically, like there's so much self-worth that gets tied societally to being able to conceive, and half the time it's the man's fault, by the way, and no one really talks about that. And so it's just like societally we assume this burden, we place this burden on women. And I knew my wife was feeling that to some extent. She's incredible, and we, you know, fortunately were able to you know, get pregnant naturally. But it was like this mental struggle that goes on behind closed doors, and you never talk about it because you don't want to, and it feels weird. But then when I did, and I mentioned it to a few friends and talked about it, suddenly they're all like, oh yeah, we struggled with the same thing, and we went through this, or we did IVF, we did this, here were the people that helped. And you realize that everyone struggles with these things, and we just don't talk about it. And there's something so amazing about realizing that it's okay to just talk and be open, and how good it feels to realize that other people are sharing these challenging experiences with you, that I've just been blown away by. But, you know, back to the point, I think we feel very blessed and very fortunate for the fact that this is happening. Obviously, you know, the only thing on my mind is like, I hope that he is healthy and kind of has a chance at, you know, at a full and loving life. But what a crazy feeling to be bringing a new person into the world.
I love that realization, and, you know, that everyone struggles. I mean, I think that is a very important point that people don't talk about. That's a specific, you know, trial of modern society. Like as parents have gotten older, you know, people are now mostly having kids in their 30s. You know, most of my friends and contemporaries have kids in their 30s or late 30s even. And it's just way like orders of magnitude harder to have a kid from a conception standpoint. And people don't talk about it. You know, I know many of my friends had the same thing. Like they feel there's a lot of feelings of self-worth, like you said, are like tied up in being able to conceive, and like nobody really talks about it. It's not in the media. It's not like in media, you know, it's not in, people don't, it's not in as much of the zeitgeist, but like if you're out
Yeah.
there going through that experience, you should know that's like very common. You
Yeah,
know,
and it's a huge part of mental health at that age, I think.
you know,
I imagine if you went and talked to a bunch of mental health coaches, therapists, executive coaches, they would say that, for men and women in the 30 to 40 range, that like the ability to conceive, that their children, their children's upbringing is like a huge, huge part of mental health struggle, I imagine. And, this is part of it. And so I just find it very liberating to realize that there are so many other people out there that are struggling with literally whatever you are struggling with or whatever you're wrestling with. There's thousands, millions of people out there that are struggling with that same thing. And so if you can find those communities, or if you can open up, what you find is that you get so much of that back. You realize you're not alone in these struggles, and it's really empowering. And I think the internet is a conduit for it. I mean, you mentioned having the Telegram group support network for people that were all trying to quit drinking at the same time. So powerful to be able to instantaneously connect with tons of other people that are going through that. But man, I'm just so excited to be a dad.
I love it. So tell me, you wrote a little bit about some of the things that you want to teach your kid, like lessons you want to impart. Like, tell me about some of them.
Yeah. Again, a lot of reflection went into that. I felt like I was like probably crying for half of writing those things because it was just like emotional process thinking about it. And a lot of it came from things I felt like my parents imparted on me. And I got some shit for that thread because a lot of people just said I was kind of like over embellishing what fatherhood is, and that it's really going to be about diapers and poop everywhere. And I think that's fine. And, there's like a cynical viewpoint, I think, behind a lot of this of like, that I'm just trying to build a brand. And so I'm writing these things. But honestly, personally, for me, that's how I kind of think, is just writing these things down of what do I want? Like, what kind of father do I want to be? And with all of these, I don't think it's like sitting down and telling this child, hey, you have to do this, or this is how you have to be. I think of it as these are the things I want to embody, and that I want my wife and I to embody, or our families to embody around this child, so that he can, try to learn from that and learn from the example that we're hopefully setting around all of these things. And so, I put it out there more as a stake in the ground, I think, than anything else, honestly, is just things I had really been thinking about. So, I mean, some of the important ones to me, I'd say the number one is, it was the first one I shared in there, is just like, to be interested. I really so deeply believe that the most amazing people in the world, if you were to find one thing in common with the most amazing people in the world, successful, spiritually aware, whatever, like not money and fame successful, but like successful in anything, the most amazing people, being interested is the one way I would characterize all of them. And I think of that as the people that just listen, and they're there and they're present, and they want to learn more about the world around them and about things that are happening. It's like the person who sits in an Uber, and rather than sitting on their phone, texting, or, looking on CNN or ESPN or whatever, is like asking the Uber driver about their life. What are the things you're wrestling with? Like, what areas of your business are tough? How have the rates changed? Just like interested in the world around you, wanting to learn. Yeah. Curious. It's intellectual curiosity. It's, everyone knows an interested person when you find one. It's hard to define, but you know that person when you're around them. And there's something so amazing about it. And it's almost like, it almost can be annoying. Like the person wants to just ask you so many things and go deeper on it. But I mean, I have one friend who jumps out to me as just being so interested. And he asked me, what were the things I wanted to teach my kid? And that was the first thing that came up to me. Cause I was like you, man, you are so interested. You could sit next to someone on the street in Morocco and have the same conversation as we're having here, because you're just interested in people and in the world around you. And I'd say that was the number one thing for me. And then the other big one, which was a very personal struggle of mine, is just this idea of like embracing being different. I think I called it different is beautiful. And this was a very personal one for me because I grew up, I'm from a mixed race background. My mom is from India. She's a first generation immigrant, moved here for college. My dad is white, Jewish, from the Bronx. So my name is Sahil Bloom, right? It's like a Indian name and then a Jewish Jewish name. And I grew up really having a struggle with who I was, identity wise, right? Like was I Indian or was I white? My friends all thought I was Indian in America. I would go to India and they would think I was white. They looked at me and said I was white. Was I a jock or was I a nerd? Because I did well in school, and so I would like be in classes with the quote unquote nerds. But then I was good at sports, and people wanted me to be a jock, and I had all of these like really a collision of all of these different worlds in my life. And at a young age, you struggle with that because I couldn't figure out where I fit in. You just want to fit in, and you want to be able to get placed into a bucket because it's just easier. And over time, I learned that my differences and the things that were weird about me that was my edge. Like that was why I was unique. That was why I was different. That was what gave me an opportunity to do cool things and to really connect with so many different people because I was so many different people. And it's just such a powerful realization to me that really came through struggle with my own identity. And honestly, like, being someone that I wasn't proud of for many years because I was trying to fit into something, because I was, trying to take the easy path rather than embracing who I was and being different. And so my child will be naturally different in its own way. I guess he'll be a quarter Indian at that point, and my wife is American. We'll be from a background that has a bunch of Indian family. My dad's family on the Jewish side didn't accept that he wanted to marry my mom, and so I've never known them, never met them. They disowned him. And so I grew up basically with an Indian family. So my child will have this very diverse background and a bunch of different things to wrestle with. I hope he's able to play team sports because I think there's a lot of power to that. But embracing that difference and just realizing from a young age that it's great to be different, that it's great to be a nerd and also want to play sports, that it's great to be from all these different backgrounds and cultures, that you don't need to just fit into one bucket nice and neatly. That is just so powerful to me.
I love that. I love that you're being conscious about like, what do I want to be different for my kid? I think that's like the opportunity for people who are parents. I'm a new parent. We're relatively like my son's 2 years old. Yeah. And just having the opportunity to like think consciously. Like, I think I never would have done it before I started doing all this self-work. Like maybe four years ago, I started really a self-growth, personal growth, self-work journey. And like before I would have just said, oh, I want my kid to be, same as me. I want to work really hard and like to be successful or whatever. And then, I'm going through becoming more conscious of like my own upbringing, how my parents affected, how they treated me and how that affected me for better and for worse. I mean, they were great parents in a lot of ways, but I also ended up with a lot of like, a little bit of scar tissue from my childhood as most people do. I find that my priorities changed for my kid. I was more conscious of like, what are the lessons I want to impart? Like, kind of like what you were thinking about. And for my kid, it's like, I just want him to be, there's two things really. It's like, I want him to be kind to other people, to give love and receive love, and then the second is to be the source of his own approval in the world, because that was something that was always absent for me. I was like, always felt like I got approval from the outside world, and I was like, really cared what the outside world thought about me. And like, that was like both a big driver for becoming successful, starting companies, et cetera, but then also a giant source of self-torture, And,
I love that one. That's a powerful one. Source of your own self-approval. Yeah, I love that.
I think this like being conscious of what I liked about your thread is like you thought about it, right? Like most people just will go through life in a subconscious way. They just do whatever they're doing, like just acting out the patterns from when they're a kid, but like, and then propagating that onto the next generation.
Well, we want our kids to be better than us, right? Like, and I say better, I don't mean more successful, richer, or whatever. I want. You hope that each successive generation learns from the traumas and the issues and the challenges of the past one. I mean, my parents, their number one goal, I'm sure, was for my sister and I to have a better life than they had in one way or another. And I want that for my son, and for any future children I have, is to just learn from the mistakes I made and like be better for the mistakes I made, because I should be able to pass the learnings of my own failures and scar tissue on. And my son will undoubtedly fail. And a lot of our own growth and learnings come from that failure. So he should. And I actually am a firm believer that you need to allow your children to fail. I haven't had children yet, so maybe it's easier said than done, but my dad, allowing me to like fail at baseball and not you know, not being there to like, you know, try to pull me out of those situations where I could fail, like allowing me to be out there and feel those failures and then being there to support me and love me when I was upset by them. That's one of the most powerful foundational experiences of my life. And so I firmly believe that you need to do that. But there's certain things that I want my son to just learn from my mistakes and be better for them. So it's a stake in the ground, and you know, it was an exercise that I found personally very self-reflective and powerful doing.
Beautiful. Well, I applaud you doing it and sharing it. We're coming up on our time,
Oh
so
man, flew by.
Yeah, it flew by. And I also want to say that I'm there for the X Games DAO. You know, like
Yeah.
I want to be part of it. Like
Hell
I
yeah.
want to buy into it. If you know, so
Awesome.
hopefully you make it happen, because I love that
I'm hoping
idea.
it comes together. I kind of felt like a pipe dream when I put it out there, and now I would say it's like reasonably probable at this point, based on the conversations I've had. I think there's a chance that somebody just comes out of left field and tries to close a deal quickly, but I've talked
Like
to
Ken
most of the
Griffin or
major
something.
groups. Yeah, hopefully not Ken Griffin's son. Yeah, as long as that doesn't happen, it's possible. Never know.
Yeah.
But I think there's a chance here. There's something to it. So I will definitely I'll definitely keep you posted on it. I appreciate the support.
Awesome. All right, Sahil, thank you so much for coming on. That's fun.
Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.